Joining me right now, Senator John Cornyn, who has been in the slap fight of the stimulus all last week. And now, as we are getting ready to go into what the president in his press conference yesterday described as, it's going to be kind of a horrific, was the word that he used, couple of weeks as we test more, therefore we're going to see more confirmed cases, and we will likely see those who have existing health issues. If they contract this, we will likely see fatalities increase. Everybody's been very transparent about it. Of course, we have the new jobs numbers, and today double now from 3 to 6 million unemployed. And in all of this, we're trying to figure out how to navigate our country forward and deal with this increasing hostility from China, this malicious mishandling of this pandemic. Second time that this has happened with them now. And it is on all of these issues that Senator Cornyn joins us from the beautiful Republic of Texas, my state. Senator, always good to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Dana.
Of course. So I want to get, first off, I want to get your perspective on what your colleague, Senator Schumer, was saying in this audio that we played, right, as we were coming into this segment. He's already looking at a fourth wave. He's discussing infrastructure, et cetera. I'm just wondering if that wasn't something that could have maybe perhaps have been handled in the stimulus that was just passed and signed into law. Maybe if they had taken out some of the pork spending and the Kennedy Center stuff and the public radio stuff, maybe that money could have gone towards some of the infrastructure he's suggesting now. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that would have been a much better use of those tax dollars. You see a difference here between people who are trying to solve this public health and economic emergency, which I believe it is, and those who see this as an opportunity to pursue partisan or political or ideological agendas. This is not a time for us to do that, assuming that's part of the normal political process. We've got a public health crisis on our hands. And the economic consequences of this are going to be huge, and that's the reason why, of course, Congress has now passed 3 separate pieces of legislation to help out our healthcare workers who are on the front lines dealing with this virus, and to jumpstart vaccine development, to do clinical trials on potential cures, but also to throw a lifeline to people who, through no fault of their own, aren't seeing any income, and small businesses are wondering, am I going to be able to keep my doors open until after this virus passes? Mm-hmm. Or these huge employers, like in the hospitality industry, who have good jobs for people, but they just don't have the demand right now, and we need to help them survive. So having said all that, I think infrastructure is a perfectly good thing for us to do, but it should not depend on us being in the middle of an emergency to do it. That's something we can take up in regular order. I'm certainly not opposed to it, but I just don't think this is an emergency measure.
Yeah, not an emergency measure at all, as opposed to some of the other things that we could be doing. The jobs numbers that are out today double from what they were last week, which we knew this was going to happen. I think that the administration has been very transparent about this. What do you tell the people out there who see these numbers, some of whom are laid off, some of whom are furloughed, they've lost their jobs entirely because the business just wasn't able to withstand this until the 2 weeks that these checks are coming in? What do you tell individuals about the projection for how we're going to get out of this once we are on the other side of this curve? I know Italy, I think, is kind of now on the descent now. With some of the decreased numbers of fatality and confirmed cases coming in. When the United States gets to that point, Senator, what do you tell individuals out there who are terrified as to what this post-pandemic era in America is going to be like? Where are we going to go? What do you imagine some of the first steps should be taken? What should those steps be? What do you tell them just to kind of not to realistically keep their hopes up?
Well, I think hope is very important, but first I think we need to recognize how depressing and anxiety-provoking this is for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
There are people like members of Congress who are continuing to receive a paycheck when many people have seen their last paycheck for a while, so that's why we had to agree to pass this last bill, which will direct up to $3,400 to a family making up to $150,000 a year, and within 2 weeks of when the president signed the bill, which was last Friday. But then also to beef up unemployment benefits, because many people, again, through no fault of their own, are going to find themselves unemployed for an extended period of time. Hopefully not months, but maybe so, and we need to prepare for that. And once we hit the bottom of this economically, once we've defeated the virus and got it under control, once we've found things that will cure it, a vaccine that will prevent it, then we need to be prepared to have jobs available for people when we come out of this current environment. But it is a tough time. You know, you've got parents home because schools are closed, or dealing with elderly parents, they wondering where their next paycheck is, how they're going to pay their rent. So that's why this is an emergency. That's why the country's on a war footing, and that's why I appreciate the president being so transparent through his daily press conferences with Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci and others about how serious this is and what we're doing to defeat it.
Right. And speaking of that, it was the day before yesterday, Dr. Birx was answering a question, and she had made the remark that one of the reasons why the United States was not as, I don't want to use the word prepared, but she had said one of the reasons why the United States wasn't able to get on top of this pandemic as quickly, and it wasn't just the United States, it's every other country. They were going off of the only data available that they had, and that is what communist China wanted to give the world. I mean, they withheld critical data for weeks until finally compelled by the World Health Organization, which they also kind of control. And finally, and even then, that it wasn't entirely accurate. And Dr. Birx was speaking to that just earlier this week. Now, knowing this and seeing the consequence of that, I know that one of your colleagues, Senator Tom Cotton, is discussing legislation as it relates to China. What is there a repercussion in terms of China's malicious handling of this? I know Downing Street has been saying that there would be, I think the phrase used was a reckoning. They're infuriated. The Deputy Prime Minister of Japan was blasting China and the World Health Organization. Senator, where do you think the United States should stand on this, and when?
Well, shame on us if we don't learn the lessons that this virus is trying to teach us. Things like our vulnerabilities to supply chains from China, whether it's manufactured goods or whether it's our medicines or whether it's our personal protective equipment that healthcare providers have to wear, masks and gowns and the like. China is also the source of these viruses. This is at least the second time we've seen these viruses start with animals and then jump to humans, and then of course humans have no immunity to it, so it spreads like wildfire. But to your point about Dr. Birx, I think she did a great public service by laying the blame squarely where it lies, and that is at the feet of the Chinese Communist Party and their desire to try to maintain their reputation in the world, even though they were the cause of this virus and this pandemic. So shame on us if we don't learn the lessons that this virus is trying to teach us and change our ways accordingly, because we simply can't allow this to happen again.
What can be done to incentivize the relocation of our supply chain for not just pharmaceuticals, but for, and I realize this has been such a consumer-driven thing. People want immediate satisfaction. They want affordability. What in the world can be done to incentivize that production, that manufacturing to return to the United States, and for us to be able to control the supply chains of at the very least, things that are critical and deal with national security? And I would actually say that the antibiotics would be one of those.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is one of those learning moments where I think people realize cheap consumer goods don't mean safe. It's maybe not the best thing for themselves or their family or for their country. And so I think we're going to have to learn some of these hard lessons and make some trade-offs. There'd already been some movement of the manufacturing supply chain out of China as a result of some of the tariffs during the trade fight with China that the president has engaged in, that very few other presidents have been willing to engage in. But I think we're going to have to do more here at home, and it may mean things cost more than they would if they were in China, but at least
I'd be happy to pay
dependable,
that.
and we won't. I'm sure we're not talking about huge amounts of money, but certainly when we have to spend $2 trillion in one individual bill, I mean, we ought to take that into account and say maybe it's better to spend a little more money up front, protecting our supply chains rather than have to pass these trillion-dollar spending packages.
Right, exactly. Last quick question for you, Senator. I know that a lot of, because we're in the very beginning of April, we have jobs numbers in, and a lot of small businesses, they're looking at bills they got to pay, families that are affected by this have bills to pay. How is the CARES Act, which is the official name for those who don't know of the stimulus passed and signed into law last week, how is this going to benefit them now that we're looking at a brand new month and some stuff's coming due?
Well, you're right. There are bills to pay. Those don't go away just because of this pandemic, and that's why the two main things that we did to try to encourage small and large employers to keep their people on the payroll and paying the benefits as long as possible is through a loan program, particularly through small businesses, and that goes to cover their payroll and their rent and their operating costs for 2 months, and that will literally be forgiven if they keep people on their payroll. Now, not everybody can do that because they may go under themselves, and so that's where the unemployment insurance benefit expansion plays an important role. But this is a huge challenge from a public health and an economic perspective. We'll get through this, but it's going to be a rough ride here for the next couple of months. It
will be, but we will get through it, and the United States has gotten through some similar things like this before. Senator John Cornyn, we appreciate your efforts there in D.C. We hope that you continue to stay safe and travel safely, stay well. God bless, and we look forward to talking with you again.